Hey there guys, and welcome back to the second part of my last video, as I'm going to be going through my top 3 least favourite 7th Doctor stories. As you've probably noticed, why 3? Because for the rest of the series I was doing top 5s, and well, okay, Sylvester McCoy only did 12 stories before the show was cancelled, and because of that there are only really 3 7th Doctor stories I strongly dislike. There are a couple of others that are sort of just mid-tier, but I wouldn't consider them to be some of the worst of Doctor Who. So really I'm just going to be listing the only ones that I outright dislike. So because of that, there aren't going to be any honourable mentions, I'm afraid. As per usual, this is all my own opinion, so if you disagree, that's fine. The other thing I want to say is, after the 10th Doctor, David Tennant, who do you want me to talk about next? The 2nd Doctor, Patrick Troughton, or the 3rd Doctor, John Pertwee? Let me know down in the comments below, and whilst you're down there, be sure to subscribe. Now onto the video. First up, we've got Paradise Towers, and this story is just Doctor Who on autopilot. Dystopian society, aliens shoved into a humane world, cheap corridors, generic character types, the 7th Doctor wanders off and Mel screams. That's pretty much all there is to this one. It's goofy, the plot is very paint by numbers, there's some very rushed world building in this one, which really has an impact on how this story flows. But also there's some very generic side characters in here. They fit the setting. I will say that, they do fit the setting, and there is some genuinely good ideas with these side characters, but it's just so overly simplified. It feels very childlike. It feels like it's a kids show rather than what Doctor Who usually was, which is a sort of show that towed the line between both. The world is pretty dull, to be honest, and that's mostly because it's just oversimplified. All of this looks incredibly cheap. There's some really bad acting. Mel is horrendously annoying in this story. There's some horrible dialogue and character work here, but the most annoying thing is there's a small glimpse of a great story here, but it's just mudded by a really bad script, low budget, and some bad trends of that era. Hence, it's at number 3. Silver Nemesis was the 25th anniversary. What the hell happened? It's completely unrelated to Doctor Who mythology, and it's just so dull. It's a mashup of aliens, historical, fantasy, and present day stuff, and they just mix together horribly. The Cybermen are completely wasted in the story. I get why they had to be there because, you know, Silver, 25th anniversary, but they just don't do anything. We don't learn anything about them, and to the plot they're completely useless. Name something the Cybermen actually do in this story, I dare you, because I genuinely can't remember a thing. They just feel like they're tacked on to a complete other storyline, which doesn't fit the main story at all. There's some really bad acting, some terrible dialogue, and some really slow pacing. This one's such a bore to get through. The directing is actually pretty solid, and Ace and the Doctor have some good moments, but overall it's just a massive missed opportunity. I don't know why this was what they thought the 25th anniversary should be. Granted, not every anniversary special has to be a 5 Doctors or something, but you could have at least had fun with it. Most people actually argue that Remembrance of the Daleks is the 25th anniversary special, because that way it taps into Doctor Who mythology and his most popular villain. In this case, it just feels like they went, well, we've got to put the Cybermen in this season somehow. Might as well make it this one. And that's exactly what it feels like. The Cybermen feel like an afterthought. This whole story, to be honest, feels like an afterthought. And because of that, it's got to be one of the worst 7th Doctor stories. Oh yes, Time and the Rani. If you remember in my previous video I said that the 7th Doctor started out really rough, and it's quite literally because his first episode was god-awful. This was the 7th Doctor's first ever story, and what a bad first impression he did. Outright, they do 6 dirty, and they just get rid of him with no dignity, and behind the scenes, I understand why Colin Baker didn't want to come back. That's really on the BBC, but the way they handled it was so bad. And now we were left with some Doctor who was very badly characterized. He was ridiculously childish and goofy, and there was no sense of any greater intelligence or power behind the 7th Doctor. He was just an idiot. It was some really bad character work going into this story. And for some reason it has a massive focus on Mel and the Rani, both of which really suck, by the way. First up, we'll go with Mel, because Mel's job is just to scream and be confused at why the Doctor looks different. Meanwhile then, there's the Rani, who's... oh god. Right, the idea she has is to collect scientists from space and time and make the Doctor the ultimate addition to it, because she wants to prove that she's better than the Doctor. That's her motivation for this. Like, what on earth were they thinking? This is just such an awful plot. It feels like a pantomime. There are a lot of subplots in this one that, for one, they overshadow the main story, but they're just long. They're really lazy. Like I said, Mel doesn't really do anything, and Rani's plan is awful. Like, this genuinely feels like a Doctor Who parody. It's got a lot of dull side characters, the pacing's really slow, but worst of all, it just ignores the 7th Doctor in his first ever episode. And this is why Doctor Who went even further downhill, because they could not introduce us to a 7th Doctor properly. Which is why on the flip side of this, as you know, there were 5 7th Doctor stories that really stuck out to me as being great, whereas there were only 3 that stuck out to me as being bad, and that's because the Doctor Who team managed to turn it round. They managed to make the 7th Doctor from an idiot into a calculating genius, and McCoy fit the role and he did an amazing job with his remaining seasons. But sadly, because this episode left such a bad taste in people's mouths, the show got cancelled anyway. People didn't want to see Seven's redemption, they just wanted to go. Which is really sad to say. And because of that, I think I've got to put this as the worst 7th Doctor episode out there. It just did such a bad job introducing him. And well, that was one of the shorter videos I've ever made. Thank you so much for watching, and of course let me know down in the comments what you want to see from me next. But of course, if you guys enjoyed this video, be sure to subscribe, like and comment, and if you did, I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye!